Well, nothing says that a global shenanigans is going to go down better than yet another global arms race. As a lay historian, looking at the run-up to World War One and the run-up to World War Two, all started with an arms race. If you go back to the century before that, arms races was the source of most of the tensions. And with the reintroduction of the Buccaneers, the 1 in 72nd Malagasy What If Navy is also improving its position. These are fully refurbished, restored, life extended, avionically improved, digital, Wi-Fi capable aircraft. And that allows the 54 Rafales. The Rafale is a superb aircraft. Of which, if you think 54, you take into account the operational conversion unit, you take into account aircraft in deep maintenance, you take into account 18 on the carrier, the active carrier at any one time, then you can see that the demands on the Rafale fleet are pretty intense, hence why they are picking up a lot of wear and tear and becoming increasingly weathered as they continue to serve. They're still absolutely fantastic aircraft. But the Rafales now need to protect the carriers against ballistic missile threats, against fast cruise missiles, against cruise missiles which change profiles as they attack, against long-range bomber threats, you name it. The Rafales are there now primarily to protect the fleet. They've still retain their multi-role capability, but the Malagasis want to release them really to focus on their primary mission. And that means that they need a longer range weapon because if you look at the threats and the emerging capabilities, long range and being able to protect the carriers from threats which are coming from further away is really important. So they went down to the global arms baguette boulangerie, and they had a look at the available options. Now, they do already have the Meteor, which is a superb weapon, which is a European weapon, long range, was long range, air-to-air missile. Now, of course, the Russians have upped the game by using MiG-31s to basically shoot down the Ukrainian Air Force at distances that they can't engage against. In the past, naval protection was really covered by the AIM-174 Phoenix, and that's the whole reason d'etre for the Tomcat. The Tomcat was primarily to put a big radar and the AIM-154 into an aircraft to protect the fleet. And that came from studies in the 1950s, where you're looking at missile-armed interceptors, the Missileer, the Douglas Missileer. You're looking at the F-111, the naval fighter program, going into the F-4 Phantom as it became with less capability, and then finally the Tomcat coming in to defend the fleet with the AIM-154. The idea of the Phoenix, as it's also known, was to protect the American carrier battle groups against Soviet long-range bombers armed with multiple cruise missiles, and that's where the threat's at again. So what if Malagasis, they then developed the super-duper Phoenix by basically fitting a massive boost stage onto the Phoenix, and there you go. That gives you an extended range missile, but the Phoenix themselves, the bodies and weapon is not really well supported by the Americans anymore. They've moved on. The Malagasis, of course, still have loads of chassis, so they strip the electronics and they fire these in tandem. They fire a radar one and they fire an infrared homing one. Very expensive, but it's a good way of getting a kill. Again, taking from the Russian-Soviet doctrine there. And here you can see those on the Mantella. Spoils the stealth a bit, but there you go. Two super duper Phoenixes ready to go. Now, the Navy really needed something as well to punch out and to protect the carrier group. So another option would be the PL-21, which is a Chinese long-range air-to-air missile. And you can see that that's very similar to the Meteor in some ways it operates a similar concept, and the PL-21 remained an option, but they wanted to get the best available to protect their two carriers, one of which is resting and training while the other one is on active deployment. And that led them to the AIM-174. Now, the reason for that is if you go down the PL-21 route, Uncle Sam will start to sanction you. And because France is a member of NATO, you've got to be aware that the what if Americans are there always ready to sanction their way to the top. And the AIM-174 is actually a really good missile. It's now being fielded by the US Navy on its Super Hornets, which is giving the US Navy back the ability it lost with the AIM-54 Phoenix and the Tomcat platform being retired. So these two have been reconfigured. Now, someone did have a good idea of using magnets. Unfortunately, my fleet is past the point where I can reapply that, but that was a really good idea, magnets to attach to weapons. So here we have one on combat air patrol. And if we take off the Butler's magnetic stand, we can see there that it's armed with a AIM-174 long-range missile, and it's got a Meteor tucked away under one wing and under the centerline, and it's got 4 micas on it, 3 radar guided and 1 infrared. So this is on combat air patrol, and this would be out protecting the fleet with a Hawkeye. Now, the Hawkeye is vital to this whole arrangement, and let's look at the second one, which is in a cleaner configuration. Again, we've got the AIM-174. These are from Fab Scale, from Hannants, £18 for 2, which is a little extortionate for 1 in 72nd. And again, you've got the micas, 2 infrareds on this one, 2 radars. We've got a Meteor and the AIM-174 there. So why is the Hawkeye, going back to the Hawkeye, why is the Hawkeye so important? Well, the range of the AIM-174 being based on the SM-6 US Navy SAM is around 250 miles, and that's the unclassified data. It's probably a little bit over that. And that is beyond the targeting capability of the Rafale and even of the Mantellas. So the Hawkeye and at the minute the E3 Sentry, E3M Sentry that the Malagasis operate, they are vital to providing the targeting information for the AIM-174. So these aircraft on combat air patrol, should a threat emerge, actually the Rafale pilots will probably never ever see the threat. All they will do is be vectored into a missile firing position. They'll fire off the AIM-174s and they will probably never ever see the results of the target other than the Hawkeye confirming that they've got a splash. And that's the way it should operate, really, because what they were trying to achieve in the 1950s with the design studies for the F-111 for naval use, the AIM-47 as it was, which led to the AIM-54. The idea is that you keep your enemy threat well away from the carrier. The Hawkeye, with its D model radar, can do that. That gives the targeting cues to the missiles. The Rafales are literally there just to serve the targeting cues and fire off the AIM-174s. Should anything then penetrate and come closer, well, they've got their micas to engage, and then they've got their meteors to engage, and again, last resort, the cannon. Now, I did get this wrong. It does have 2 infrared on each of these wing stations, so a good mix. But that's the way that beyond visual range weaponry is going now. The other good thing about the AIM-174 is it can be used to target some level of ballistic missile and cruise missile threats. Again, the targeting cues will come from the Hawkeyes. Weapons integration has been performed with the Americans, the Rafale being a NATO aircraft. Whilst the Americans would love the Malagasis to buy the Hornet and Super Hornet, the Malagasis have said no. They like the Rafale and they've been to the Global Arms boulangerie. Yes, they've selected the AIM-174 and yes, that gives them new combat capability. At £18 for 2 missiles, fleet rollout is going to be fairly slow. In the meantime, the Mantellas and the Air Force will continue to operate the AIM-174 Super Duper long-range Phoenixes, as here. But eventually all of them will move over to the AIM-174. The Navy first, because protecting the carriers is vital. And that frees up the Buccaneers to focus on their strike role, with the A4X Skyhawks doing close air support. Takes some of the burden off the Rafales, preserving airframe life. As you can see, being naval aircraft take an absolute battering, and that's why the paint finishes as it is. A slightly longer video than I anticipated. What next? Well, the next level would be your long-range missiles becoming hypersonics, and flying a extremely fast Mach 10 course to the target. Now, the AIM-174 is a fast missile. It's got an active seeker head. The problem with hypersonics is the plasma effect and being able to update targeting information. But really, everything is moving on leaps and bounds in the world of global conflict, and the arms race is in full heat, which is doing the weapons manufacturers extremely well. And of course, if you are a non-aligned, well, slightly aligned nation now, you need to protect your assets. Take care. Goodbye.